What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. We've got another great guest for you this week on Next Pats. It's the great JT O'Sullivan of the QBschool.com new website. You need to go check that thing out. If you're familiar with JT's content, if you're not, what is wrong with you? He's been on this podcast before. The man is everywhere. He's on YouTube. You know his channel, I'm sure, because he has broken down not only Mac Jones for years, but now he has broken down a lot of Drake Maye college tape, and I'm sure we'll be getting Drake Maye breakdowns whenever those are available to us. Who knows? Maybe it's even a little bit of preseason action. I don't know. We'll have to bother JT when it comes to what we can get from him as it relates to Drake Maye as soon as humanly possible. But JT O'Sullivan, great guest for us this week because he's been in a West Coast offense. He has been a quarterback as soon as he got to the league, as a matter of fact, in 2002, in this exact kind of system, because he played for Mike McCarthy. He was the offensive coordinator in New Orleans in 2002 when O'Sullivan was there. Who is a McCarthy disciple? That's right. Patriots' new offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt, as well as Patriots assistant, Ben McAdoo, two of the biggest brains running this offense, obviously Van Pelt being number one there. But JT is going to break down for us, now that we've had the opportunity to watch 3 OTA practices and see how this operation functions, at least in a practice setting, why the Patriots and Alex Van Pelt in particular are focusing on the things they are focusing on. JT is going to tell us the why. Why are they doing certain drills? What are they working on here? Why does that matter? How do those things actually sync up to help this offense run a little bit more efficiently? So we're going to get to our conversation with JT in just a little bit. I think you're going to find it incredibly interesting. He's also going to get into Drake Maye specifically because, again, he watched all kinds of Drake Maye college tape, and there are all kinds of breakdowns from JT on Drake Maye that you need to go find if you haven't found him already, just to give you a little bit better idea of what he might be as he enters into the league. But what will have to happen, in JT's opinion, in order for Drake Maye to have success? He has some thoughts. Before we get to those thoughts, let's talk a little bit more about the coaching staff here and belief systems and philosophies, because we just had the opportunity to talk to Alex Van Pelt before the third and final Patriots open OTA session. Minicamp is about to start. That'll be next week. But before the third OTA session that was available to be viewed by media people, we got a chance to talk to Van Pelt. Not only did we hear a little bit about how Drake Maye is doing, but about what Van Pelt believes in. And as a West Coast guy, it's pretty clear he bows at the altar of the gods' timing and rhythm when it comes to his passing game. Timing and rhythm. Those are perhaps the two most well-worn words used by football folks when describing a West Coast-rooted passing game. But they're particularly apt to describe this new Patriots offense because we've heard them. We've heard them relatively frequently, I feel, from Van Pelt. He and McAdoo both know how critical timing and rhythm are in the style of offense they want to play. Both are disciples of Mike McCarthy. There's that name again. He's a disciple of Paul Hackett, who was a disciple of Bill Walsh. McCarthy and Hackett, as a matter of fact, were together at Pitt, the University of Pittsburgh, when they had a young quarterback by the name of Alex Van Pelt. Then McCarthy and Hackett, they ended up with the Chiefs. Van Pelt spent a year there with both of them in the early 90s. And then Van Pelt later coached under McCarthy again in Green Bay. So there's that tree. You can picture it, I'm sure. So as you're envisioning the branches of that tree and where Alex Van Pelt sits on said tree, it is important to point out who believed in the importance of footwork at the quarterback position and how it impacted the overall functionality of a given offense. Walsh, Hackett, McCarthy, and now Van Pelt. And you can see Van Pelt follow through on those beliefs at the start of every practice. There's extensive drill work, gaining ground with your first 3 steps from out behind center. Credit to Mark Daniels of Mass Live for this great video from Patriots practice. Look at those steps, so exaggerated, but that's what they're trying to teach. You can see everyone actually watching Jacoby Brissett because he knows what they want. What else are they trying to drill? Keeping those feet in alignment so you can efficiently get to your landmark and hitch up. You can see this video that I took from one of the practices of Drake Maye working his way through the bags, keeping your feet tied together as you move in the pocket with your eyes up. That's the quarterback school in action. Fundamental work that coaches like Van Pelt, McAdoo, McCarthy, and Hackett hope to become second nature for their passers when players move on from drill work to the real competition. Here's Van Pelt on why they run some of the drills they run early in Patriots practice.
It's a lot of footwork training, a lot of foot speed, a lot of pocket movement, off balance throws, things that are real football. And it goes all the way back for me to Paul Hackett, who was Coach McCarthy was a graduate assistant when Paul was doing the quarterback training. So it really goes back to the origin of the West Coast with Walsh and Hackett as far as the training of the quarterback. The drills that we do out here are the same drills I did in 1989. And they stand the test of time, in our opinion, how you train a quarterback.
Part of that training, having your left foot forward, both under center and in the gun. Here's Alex Van Pelt talking to Cleveland media when he was working with Baker Mayfield at the time, who had to go through a significant change in terms of his footwork and how he operated both in the gun and under center. He's talking about that left foot forward thing. Van Pelt said at the time, quote, "It gives you more rhythm in the pass game, especially the quick game. Less mechanical, more rhythmic. It's more like a little dance step as opposed to a big heavy step. The rhythm is very important in the passing game. The more a quarterback can play in rhythm with his feet, then he'll be more accurate. There's more rhythm and it's not as robotic. It's more fluid. I've always used the term that I want the feet to be like Mozart and not like Metallica." Close quote. Now, here's Van Pelt this year to us, actually just last week, on the idea of having the left foot forward and why it's important for Drake Maye to learn that particular footwork.
In our system, it's all based on timing and rhythm in the pass game, and I think the left foot forward has always given this offense the best chance to play on time and in rhythm.
There are those words again, timing and rhythm. So how's Drake Maye picking it up? He's still headbanging to Master of Puppets, or is he grooving to Requiem in D minor? Van Pelt said Maye's biggest strides have come in how he's handled calling plays in the huddle and his footwork. When asked the other day what surprised him most about Drake Maye's development to this point, Van Pelt had this to say.
I'd say probably just the ability to pick up the footwork changes. I know that's a big change for a guy to come in and completely change the footwork, but we did it right away and he's embraced it.
Van Pelt acknowledged later that it might look a little robotic at first. He knows he's throwing a lot at the number 3 overall pick. That's how he wants to function right now. He's expecting it to be robotic, as a matter of fact, but this stuff matters to him. And it sounds like his top student is already picking up what he's putting down. It may be a while before we see Maye play in a meaningful game, but the more he's able to absorb what's being thrown his way from a mechanics standpoint, the more comfortable his coaching staff is going to be throwing him to the wolves whenever that inevitability comes to pass. All right, now for more on the West Coast offense, on how it should look, on how Drake Maye is going to fit into this offense and what he needs to do in order to have success within this offense. Let's bring in our buddy JT O'Sullivan of the QB School on the other side of this conversation. We're going to give you 5 things to watch when we get to minicamp. Again, minicamp starts early next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The media will have access to all 3 sessions. And so just wanted to give you 5 little things to preview. If you want some more thoughts on how I thought things went down in OTA practice number 3, go back and check on the most recent edition of the Patriots Talk podcast. But we're going to look ahead a little bit. We're going to look at what comes next. I know, shocking on this podcast. But before we do that, here's JT. Very excited now to have with us JT O'Sullivan, the QB School, former Patriots quarterback, JT O'Sullivan. JT, thanks for being on with us again here, man.
Oh, what's going on? Yeah, very brief.
I was asking you before we came on air if you ever saw the inside of this particular Gillette Stadium closet that I happen to be sitting in right now, but it sounds like maybe not.
No, I don't remember much about my time in Gillette other than the quarterback room and some intense team meetings where I was afraid I was going to get red dotted up on the board and practice film.
Did that ever happen?
I don't think it ever happened, but it was definitely, I always tell people it was by far the most unique team meeting environment. I'd never been around a place that went into that much detail from a head coach every single day. So it was pretty cool.
Full team and kind of stressful is my understanding. A lot of coffee, no windows, just sort of darkness and everybody squirming in their chairs.
It was definitely a different level of intensity. I don't remember any other team meeting where people were like nervous you were going to get called on, almost like a bad college class, where you're not prepared to like the lecturer is going to like holler at you and haven't done the reading. But at least at the Patriots, you had done the reading. You still might not get the answer right.
It is fascinating, and this is just a quick detour before we get into some of the West Coasty stuff and stuff that I wanted to ask you based on what the Patriots are doing now offensively. But do you think it's good that they're undergoing the change that they're going through right now, where it seems to be a little bit more relaxed? Obviously, Bill brought with him a certain kind of culture, and it felt as though, I think that, I hate this word, but it feels as though the narrative has been that for younger players, that's a hard thing to sell, or a hard thing for players to really thrive in, is that kind of stressful situation that you're describing in the team meetings and that we've heard before. So do you think it's culturally, it might be a good change for New England here?
I don't know. I'm probably not the right guy to ask. It was such a special formula for that time that it's hard to kind of change the lens and say appropriate that kind of approach to what the game is now. And obviously, when you're not having success, it's a hell of a lot harder to run that kind of vibe around the building. But man, I just appreciate it for what it was. Even my little time there, I just appreciated how unique and intense and locked in. And how, I always said it would be hard for me, who's someone who wasn't even there very long, to imagine living in that world for a long time. Just the everything from the stress, the intensity, all that type of stuff. But you can see how it would, if you could survive and thrive, it would, create that level of, high performance.
It's a fascinating time here now because you can already sort of sense it as we're watching practice. And I'm just getting off the practice field. They just had another OTA session this afternoon and this is probably unfair, but it's a new coaching staff. And we're used to seeing things, especially practice, run a certain way where it's really efficient. There's not a lot of wasted time on the field. Everybody knew, okay, this period to this period to this period, this is where we need to be. There are moments occasionally now where it's a little less organized is what it looks like. And they're just brief little snippets, but you can already kind of hear people, other reporters saying, oh, people look a little scattered right now. So it's a little tiny window. And again, I think it's probably unfair, and it is OTAs. Some of the best players on the team aren't even here today. But it's a little window into the pressures that this new staff will be faced with filling in for Bill, because the scrutiny is going to be such that, you're filling in for the greatest of all time. And are you crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's the way we're used to seeing?
Yeah, I don't know if you'll be able to pick up from, a practice lull or something like that, those types of things. But it will definitely be unique for everyone across the league to see that uniform and see that organization run in maybe a little bit of a different, looser fashion, whatever that looks like. I would say that, I only played for over a third of the league, but for the vast majority of the teams, every practice is kind of the same. Everyone's kind of running from drill to drill. What the script is. Those types of things are going to be harder to see. I think it's going to be more interesting to see how prepared they look week in and week out, and what kind of football they look like they're playing when it matters most, around Thanksgiving. Those types of things, I think, are the things that you just became so accustomed to and really spoiled in that area of the country with that kind of football for so long.
Reason I wanted to talk to you at this time of year is because we are watching as we're watching these practices, we're watching a new offense be installed. This is different from the Josh McDaniels, Bill O'Brien sort of stuff that we've seen. And it does have some similarities. Alex Van Pelt's been very open about it. It's going to have similarities to what we were doing in Cleveland, which is Kevin Stefanski, who is connected to Gary Kubiak, who's connected to Mike Shanahan. It's this Shanahan-y type of offense that's really spread throughout the league. But you're somebody who played under Mike McCarthy in New Orleans, who both Alex Van Pelt and Ben McAdoo is going to have a big role in the Patriots offensive coaching staff. Were both sort of disciples of, I guess. So I wanted to bring you on, JT, to sort of just get a feel for on a very sort of 30,000 foot level. What does it mean to run a West Coast offense? What is this offense going to be about at a very foundational level, not being in the meeting rooms that they're having right now, but from everything you've studied from the modern game and from your experience in the league and your time specifically with McCarthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you overlay kind of the principles that Mike McCarthy was about, and it is probably still about, even though I haven't talked to him in a while, is the rhythm of what that passing game looks like as opposed to potentially what some other passing games look like. And I'm talking about drop back passing game. And so the timing and rhythm that is tethered to the quarterback's footwork, drop, the pass protection, and the route depths, as opposed to maybe what a lot of people associate with New England offensively the last two decades, which is a little bit more what I would consider like choicey, slot option, those types of things, maybe some play action shots. This is much more rhythm, timing. Even if you think, I was with Mike McCarthy in New Orleans, but when he went to Green Bay, you think of Aaron Rodgers at his prime. The rhythm and kind of the way he plays the game with his feet. Now he's obviously got ridiculous arm talent, but that kind of getting through the read, the progression with your feet and your hitches and the timing of what that looks like is what I associate that offense with. And I think it's something that is not easy to learn. And it's hard to overlay into, especially a system where, guys aren't used to doing that. So a lot of similar things across offenses as far as the detail to the routes and all those types of things. But the quarterback specifically to be able to say, hey, what kind of read is this? What's the drop? And then listening to your feet and the rhythm of the play comes with experience and reps and seeing someone do it and learning yourself. And so all those things go into how important these kind of OTA practices are, because maybe it's the first time you've ever been asked to play like that.
Well, especially for Drake Maye, this is, really his first time consistently being under center, for example. And, the play calls and the verbiage is one thing, but the footwork is, it's my understanding, very new to him. When you say the rhythm of the play and how that might sort of take you through the play, can you take us through what that means? If it's a 5-step drop, does that mean you should be almost, you should have your eyes in a certain spot once you hit your back foot, and once you hitch up, your eyes should be in a different spot. What does that mean to you when you're talking about the rhythm and how it's connected to the play calls?
Yeah. So that, in short, yes, that. And so every play is going to have a different set of quote unquote timing. And so whatever the drop is supposed to be for the first read, let's just pretend that we have like a 5-step drop on a curl flat to our left. And so that's the first read. Well, at the top of that 5-step, we'll call it a 5 and a hitch or a 5 and a reset. So not 5 and throw. So that hitch is going to be for that first read. We're going to read the flat defender in zone. So wherever that flat defender tells us to go, we want to get the ball out on that first hitch or reset, depending on how you talk about the drops. If that's not there, well, then on the backside, let's say we have like a cross coming across or an in. So that second hitch or reset, you want to get to that in with the footwork. So that's the timing. So you're not sitting back there holding on to the ball, kind of like waiting to take a sack, that putting your offensive lineman in a tough situation. They know, hey, this ball's going to come out in 2 or 3 hitches, those types of things. And it allows that route on the backside time to work into your vision. And so everything's kind of connected and works together in this kind of rhythm that offense allows you to do. Now, that's great on paper and OTAs when you're maybe running routes on air. That timing can go sideways when the other guys have pads on. They want to jack you at the line of scrimmage. They want to bring pressure. They want to bring exotic looks. And all of a sudden, that rhythm stuff gets a little bit harder when those guys are over there trying to put their hands all over your chest.
Is that the most difficult part of it? Is that it's not always going to be that perfect picture. You're not always going to have that perfect situation. You're probably more likely than not going to be disrupted at certain points.
Yeah, I think that offense at its peak, took advantage of what the league was like then. And what I mean by that is like when the West Coast originated into the league and you saw the ball control, the precision of the underneath quick game passing, it was a less physical league at the line of scrimmage. They were doing less things defensively, where now it's a much more of what I consider like a hybrid league where you see all sorts of different fronts, all sorts of different pressures, all sorts of different coverages. And so the quarterback and these offensive systems have to have a lot more answers. It can't just be, or at least I don't think offense at its highest level can just be, hey, it's a pure progression, 1, 2, 3. You read it out like this every single time. Well, what if we get this coverage? What if we get this pressure? You got to have, and most quarterbacks who play at a high level are always asking, what if we get this? What if we get that? Well, these plays need to have those answers. It can't be, and this is no shot, at like air raidy guys, but the simplicity of coming out there in 3 or 4 formations and running, 5 or 6 of the same pass concepts, that would just get eaten up in the league. And so it has to be more multiple. And what that looks like just adds layers of complexity into a guy who potentially into a system, into a team, an organization that's trying to learn a new rhythm centric drop back passing game.
What you're describing there, you mentioned air raid, but I remember talking to you a couple of years ago about the Matt Patricia, Joe Judge Patriots offense, and there not being a lot of answers is what it looked like, at least. And I know that was a criticism of people that were in those meeting rooms. There were just not a lot of answers for people that year in that offense. And we understand why. There just wasn't a whole lot of experience. The guys that were running it didn't, in some cases didn't know the answers to what was supposed to be going on in that situation. I did want to ask you specifically, because I know you watched all of these quarterbacks. You're already watching college quarterbacks for next year's draft is what it seems like, but you watch so many of these guys who were just drafted, Drake Maye included. And I follow along, a proud member of the quarterback school Patreon community. And so I'm watching you sort of ride the Drake Maye roller coaster, which it was. And, as somebody who watched him a lot myself, like I would acknowledge and I liked him. I liked sort of the idea of Drake Maye before he got here. There was plenty to sort of scratch your head at and plenty to be excited about. But when you think about what you studied with Drake Maye and you think about this kind of offense, why, or I guess, what do you make of that fit? Should be my question. How do you feel like that might go, understanding what Drake Maye was in college and the things he'll have to learn here?
I mean, I think I could easily make the argument for it going either way, if I'm being honest. I think when you turn on the film and you look at the wow Drake Maye plays, that fits any offense. Though that ability to create, to push the ball down the field, to be explosive, to be dynamic at that high of a college football level is something that's special. So that fits anything. Now, what is on film, I wouldn't say is a shoe-in to fit what I consider a robust, seasoned West Coast timing rhythm passing game that you see a lot of across the league in the drop back world. That doesn't mean that he can't do it. It just means that wasn't what he was asked to do. That's not a fault of Drake Maye of college. That's just not how UNC played offense. And so, his ability to adapt and their ability to adapt to his skill set is one of those things that I think will be one of the interesting storylines as soon as he gets in there and plays. I can say that I think it's going to be a challenge for you to come into the league and kind of have to learn for the first time how to play a little bit more on time, on rhythm, to what I think most people consider air raidy, where, hey, we're working to grass, we're working to space, we want to settle. Like, there's none of that. And that's hard to do in the league. You're getting the ball out quickly. You're making pre-snap decisions. Not that he didn't make pre-snap decisions, but you're living in that rhythm timing world that just isn't as, apparent in the air raid system.
Is there room for somebody to be a playmaker at that position in this offense? It does look like, it's been interesting sort of watching the quarterback drills, because it looks like while they are very focused on the footwork and the, gaining a ton of ground with their first 3 steps from under center and doing some of these sort of over exaggerated.
That gave me the shivers, bro. Yeah. It's been a while since I've heard that. That's funny.
I mean, that's what it looks like now. And I, from what I gather, these are the same drills that, this coaching tree has run since like 1989. That was so beaten into your head. While you were in it, were you sort of, did it become mundane, or did it become something that you loathed to understand was coming your way in a practice? What was that like for you?
It was just something that, it's, I always tell people, and I learned this the hard way playing, like, I can tell you what you value by where you spend your time. And that's not football centric. That's more life centric. But like football, if we're going to go out there and quarterback individual and we're going to work on getting away from the center, well, we're probably going to be under center a lot. Like, that's not how I would play offense nowadays, but that's certainly how people play offense. And so it's just, that tells you what they're valuing when you watch how they do and what they focus on in their individual drill. That type of thing to me has its place this time of year. It really does. Like, I think you have to get that stuff drilled into you where it becomes second nature and you understand the expectations for the depth of drops that maybe, to be quite honest, and this is no shot at UNC, but most colleges don't put an emphasis on, hey, under center, your drop, you need to be at, 7.5 yards, 8 yards. You need to be at this depth on quick game. That type of stuff is just not where their world is at. I think a lot of the time we're in the league. That's the reality. You're going to work on that. That's part of the detail and nuance that goes into the position. But when it comes to, hey, is Drake Maye going to thrive this year, I don't think like his depth getting away from center is going to be the factor of why he doesn't. I think you're right on where I think across the league, across the landscape of the league, I think people have gotten more locked into the importance of being able to create out of structure. And so they practice scramble drills. They practice off-platform throws. They practice muddy pockets and being able to get off-angle throws, those types of things, which back in the day, you just did it if you were an athlete. Where now I think it's more ingrained into, hey, if this isn't there, we need you to extend. We got to have a couple big plays off you extending plays this game where, maybe in the past, you guys haven't seen that kind of football in, with the Patriots, where now, you're going to count on, hey, we need that wow play from him once a half that we're used to seeing in college. So we'll see what that looks like.
Last thing I'll ask you, because it popped in my head as you're talking, the depth he gains on the first 3 steps, not necessarily going to be indicative of a good season or a bad season for Drake Maye. And this season, we don't even know, JT, how much he's going to play. They have Jacoby Brissett here. He could be sitting for quite some time. So I guess I'll ask for sort of you to look into your crystal ball on sort of like a 2-year timeline. But if Drake Maye is going to have success in the NFL over the course of these next couple of years, whenever he's finally inserted, what needs to happen in your opinion?
Well, I mean, if I'm being honest, I would, and I'm, you're literally in the building right now, but from the outside looking in, I would say the expectations are pretty low, as far as, wins, performance, those types of things. So for me, if you go out there and look the part, meaning that you can protect the ball, that you can do plays that help us win, that you're not hurting the team consistently, that it looks like the game isn't too fast for you, that you can go out there and execute what the coaches are asking you to do consistently, I think that's, an early indicator of, okay, we might have something going. Now, I think it's going to be unfair to everybody in this class, to all 3 of those guys, and really everybody in the first round, to what CJ Stroud did last year, where people are going to come in and have expectations where, oh, you're going to come in and somebody's going to light the world on fire. And maybe that this year happens some other team, and now it becomes the norm where that puts even more pressure on these young guys. But I would look for continued improvement. I would look for big play ability. If we're talking about what I would look for specifically quarterback-wise from Drake Maye, difference from his college game to translating to the Sunday game, what I classify as like the quality of the miss, I think has to get significantly tighter. So there were spray misses that are you just don't see anywhere from a guy who starts consistently on Sundays. And I would imagine you're going to see some of that early on, but as the season progresses, everything is a little bit tighter. Everything is, a competitive throw. There's no, spiking balls. There's no skipping stones, those types of throws that maybe we saw every once in a while at Carolina.
JT O'Sullivan at the QB school on Twitter. That is what McCarthy, isn't that what he called his quarterback drilling period? The quarterback school, right?
That's where I got it from.
Is it where you got it from? That was the genesis of this whole deal.
There you go. Look at you putting it together.
That's I'm a reporter, JT, at my core. That's about as investigative as I will get, probably until we get to training camp. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully the work is pretty easy between now and then. But thank you so much for spending some time with us. I'm looking at your X handle right now. You're at the QB school.
I got X issues right now. I don't have access to my quarterback school account. So push everybody to the website. Got a new website. Get over there, check it out. Appreciate it.
And it's the website?
theqbschool.com.
theqbschool.com.
You can ask me anything. I got a little AI thing going on over there. Oh, wow. Yes. You can ask me how Drake Maye is going to do in the fall.
Oh, I love that. All right, I have to check that out.
I'm interested. I'm going to have to see what I say.
Still on YouTube as well?
For sure.
Still on YouTube. Patreon community is fantastic. You get a lot of extra stuff from JT. Spends so much time breaking down football and making us smarter. So make sure you check him out everywhere. JT, thanks again for being with us, man. This is great.
Good times, Phil. Anytime.
All right, great stuff there from JT. Always learning from him. Clearly likes a lot of what Drake Maye has to offer from the quarterback position, but still clearly also has some questions as to how his skill set will translate. I know he doesn't love doing his quarterback rankings video every year as he studies these players that are in the draft, but he does do a quarterback rankings video. And I'll tell you, the way he had them laid out for 2024, if you hadn't seen it already, number 1, he had Caleb Williams. Number 2, he had Jaden Daniels. Number 3, he had JJ McCarthy. And number 4, he had Drake Maye. And he was always sort of in that range. If if you tracked JT's analysis over the course of the pre-draft process, he was always kind of in that 3 to 4 range. And the only question, as far as I was concerned, somebody who, again, follows his content, was where does he end up in relation to JJ McCarthy? Ultimately, he went with McCarthy slightly ahead of Drake Maye. He has Maye at 4. So we'll see how it pans out, obviously, for Drake Maye. And again, really looking forward to whenever we'll be able to get some on the field analysis in this new offense for Drake Maye, hopefully sooner rather than later. 5 things to watch at minicamp in rapid succession. Ready for them? Here they are. Obviously, Drake Maye, and specifically his polish. Where is the footwork? Where is his understanding of what to do before the snap at the line of scrimmage? These are things that, again, we've seen progress with. We've heard about the progress he's making with his footwork. We've seen him make plays at the line of scrimmage in terms of just vocalizing changes to his teammates. We've seen him recognize things before the snap that I think have led to pretty easy throws after the snap. He has been decisive. There's not been a lot of padding of the football and scrambling. There's not been a lot of padding of the football and ultimately throwing it away. Have there been issues when the offensive line's been out there? Yes, there have. And we'll get into that briefly here. But what's his polish level like? Because we know he can make plays. We know he can make plays off script. He's already been doing it. Stepping up, scrambling, throwing sidearm in the tight red zone to Pop Douglas in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. Sort of weaving a pass through the trees, so to speak. Those are the kinds of things he can do on the run. When they're drilling it, he just looks so fluid when he's moving really to either side and throwing accurately and throwing effortlessly. So we know he can do that. How polished does he look in minicamp? We shouldn't expect him to look incredibly polished, but I think for some, not necessarily for me, because I think I'm a little bit higher on him than most and was a little bit higher on him than most even before the draft. But I think for some, he might be ahead of schedule. Do the Patriots feel that way about Drake Maye? We'll see. But obviously, we'll be watching him very, very closely. In 3 consecutive days of minicamp will be a lot of fun. We've had these little snippets of action that we've been able to watch, right? Once a week for the last 3 weeks. Now we've got 3 consecutive days. So good, bad, ugly, everything in between. We're going to get it all in minicamp early in the process of Drake Maye's development. Number 2, wide receivers and wide receiver health specifically. Juju Smith-Schuster banged up at the end of OTA number 3. Javon Baker didn't participate in OTA number 3. Looked a little bit gimpy walking off the field after doing what looked like maybe a little bit of rehab work and off the back hill of the practice field and in all likelihood back to the facility. Where are those guys at? Are they able to participate? If they're not, it's going to be more reps for guys like Kayshon Boutte, who I think has looked okay at times. Maybe some of these other younger receivers that we don't know much about, but are being given an opportunity to step in, step up potentially, and show that they're worthy of real roster consideration. How about Jalen Polk as well? Not that he's injured, so he doesn't fall under this health category, but do we see him pop a little bit more? I've really liked watching him, and I feel like he has real agility and real route running chops. We just haven't seen it really lead to all that many impressive or outstanding or noteworthy plays in practice in the 3 practices that we've been able to attend. But maybe we see some of that in minicamp. Number 3, what to watch in minicamp. It's the offensive line rotation specifically. And the reason I use that word and not performance is because, again, this is not going to be padded. This is still passing camp, essentially. About 90% of the plays are pass plays. The defensive line knows what's coming. Again, without pads, defensive line's going 100 miles an hour. Every play's a pass play. The offensive line's at a real disadvantage. Now, is that excuse making for how things looked in OTA number 3 when, with the Patriots going 11 on 11, it looked pretty ugly? After some of the 7-on-7 periods actually looked okay. So you're dropping in the offensive line. It doesn't look so good. And there are a number of reps that would be sacks. Putting them in my sort of air quote fingers here. I understand why some people watched that practice and said, this is a problem. It will be if that continues to happen with the pads on. And obviously, if we see it in training camp, joint practices, preseason games, and I'm not saying it won't happen because I still have so many questions about the personnel at these different positions, whether it's guard or tackle. But I would say at this point in time, let's not read too much into the down-to-down performance of the offensive line because this isn't real line play that we're seeing this time of year. But what's the rotation look like? Are Chuks Okorafor and Micah Wenu out there at tackle, and are they able to practice consistently? Neither guy was there for that third OTA practice that we were just at. Where's Caden Wallace? Because he practiced at right tackle in the most recent practice we were able to watch, and they're trying to transition him to left tackle after playing his entire collegiate career at right tackle. Is that a good idea to be swapping him back and forth? Is he going to be a swing guy as a third-round pick? Maybe. It's not completely unreasonable, but they've had such a glaring need at left tackle. The thinking was they could get him at left tackle, and they might be able to play him consistently there. I think that had to be your pie-in-the-sky hope if you're the Patriots. But are they already thinking about just making him sort of a versatile player who can play on either side? In my opinion, maybe Chuks Okorafor, maybe that's where you want him to land ultimately. And you'd love, again, in your heart of hearts, for the rookie to be able to step in and play left tackle. But watch how that rotation goes. Even at guard, where's Layden Robinson? Where's Nick Leverett? Seen both of those guys play at right guard. How about Sidy Sow? Is he able to be out there consistently? He didn't really do all that much in one of the practices that we were able to attend for OTAs. So where's the rotation at? Because, again, it's very, very early. But I think once you get to training camp, you'd love to have a 5 settled so that those guys can get their communication down, so they can understand how each other's working. Again, it's a new offense for everybody here. So the sooner the better in terms of settling on your guys, quote unquote. It doesn't look like, based on the practices that we've seen, again, super early, doesn't look like they've settled on their guys just yet. Number 4, what to watch at minicamp. Some of the veterans who haven't been there. Matthew Judon is an obvious one. Devon Godshaw, another obvious one. Those guys haven't been there for the practices that we've been able to attend. Are they there? They should be. It's mandatory. They would be incurring some fines if they weren't there, period. My guess is they both will be there. Judon has already been on the record saying he will be there. How much will they participate, though? Because it's one thing to be there and avoid the fine. It's another thing to be out there and moving around and doing a lot when you're probably looking for a new contract, as both those players very well could be. And how about Jonathan Jones? Not there at either of the last 2 practices we were at. Drake Maye was asked about it recently. He didn't seem all that concerned, called him a pro's pro. It sounded, honestly, like it wasn't an injury thing and that it was a choice by Jones not to attend. So when he's there for minicamp, if he's out there and if he's available, how does that shake up the rest of the secondary? Is he the number 2 corner on the boundary? Is he the starting slot corner with Christian Gonzalez at one of the outside spots? And then who's number 2 in that scenario? Where's Marcus Jones fit into all of this? That leads me to point number 5. 5th thing to watch for Patriots minicamp is that second corner spot. It could be Jones, it could be Alex Austin, who Drake Maye had some complimentary things to say earlier this week, called him a real NFL player and that they realized it late last year. Ends up making, just a few minutes later in an 11-on-11 period, makes a nice pass breakup covering Tyquan Thornton. He's all over him in the red zone, gets a fingertip on the ball, is able to knock it away out of bounds with Jacoby Brissett making the attempt there. So he's somebody with a little bit of size who played enough last year for the Patriots to understand to a degree what they have in him. If he continues to improve, continues to develop, does he end up being their second corner on the outside opposite Gonzalez with Jonathan Jones on the interior? Or does Marcus Jones fit into that mix in an early fashion? Is he high enough up the depth chart after missing a year due to injury where Alex Austin is more an emergency option on the roster, active roster guy? It sort of sounds like that's how Drake Maye pictures him, but not somebody you necessarily would want starting right away in 2024. Okay. Those are our 5 things to watch in minicamp. Thanks for listening to our interview with JT O'Sullivan. Always makes us smarter. And hopefully you found some of that footwork drill, footwork philosophy stuff off the top of the podcast. Interesting. I know I do, but I will say, really excited for the actual football to start. Let's get to training camp. I don't want to wish away the summer. I really don't. Let's get to training camp. Let's see some real competitive reps. Let's get the pads on a little bit. I can't wait. I'm really itching for some real football. I'm sure you are too. We aren't there yet, but still plenty to talk about. Thanks for listening. We'll have another episode of the Next Pats podcast for you next week. Again, this will be a post minicamp edition because we've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday practices to get through. We will be unloading the notebook on you later next week where we can talk about everything we saw at minicamp. We'll break it all down then. Until then, enjoy the NBA Finals. We'll talk to you very soon.